The Lost Books of Adam and Eve, What the Forbidden Scriptures Reveal About the Beginning, an audiobook experience. What if the story of Adam and Eve you heard in Sunday school is just a summary, a brief overview of a much longer, stranger, more terrifying saga that spans nearly 2,000 years of forgotten history? What if the Garden of Eden was only the beginning, and the real drama unfolded not among the trees of paradise, but in the harsh wilderness beyond its gates, where angels and demons fought for the souls of the first family, where visions of a coming Savior were given to weeping exiles, and where the fate of all humanity hung in the balance for centuries before the flood ever came? The book of Genesis gives us the creation, the temptation, the fall, and then silence. A few verses about Cain and Abel, a genealogy, and suddenly we're at Noah and the flood. But what happened in between? What about the nearly 1,600 years between the expulsion from Eden and the Great Deluge? According to ancient texts banned from the Bible, those centuries were not silent at all. They were filled with wars with Satan, visions of Christ's coming, the rise of the Nephilim, the corruption of two bloodlines, and a cosmic battle for the soul of humanity that makes the garden story look like a prelude. These texts exist. They were read by early Christians, quoted by church fathers, and then deliberately excluded when the canon of Scripture was sealed. Why? Because they revealed too much, because they gave details that challenged the official narrative, because they showed a God who struggled, a Satan who schemed, and humans who suffered in ways the Bible only hints at. For centuries, these books slept in monasteries and libraries, waiting to be found, waiting to speak again to a generation ready to hear their message. The story of how these ancient books survived is almost as remarkable as the stories they contain. They were preserved not in the great libraries of Rome or Constantinople, but in the remote monasteries of Ethiopia, high on the cliffs of the Horn of Africa, where monks copied and recopied them by hand for over 1,000 years. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church never excluded them from their scriptures. To this day, the Book of Adam and Eve remains part of the Ethiopian biblical canon, read and revered alongside Genesis and the Gospels. This alone should give us pause. While the Western Church was busy deciding which books were in and which were out, a living tradition on the other side of the world was keeping these ancient witnesses alive. When European scholars finally gained access to Ethiopian manuscripts in the 19th century, they were stunned to find texts they had only heard of in fragments and quotations. The first and second books of Adam and Eve were among the most complete and the most startling. They claimed to be the words of Adam himself, dictated to his son Seth, preserving for future generations the full account of what happened after the expulsion from Eden. Whether one takes this claim literally or not, the texts themselves are a window into how ancient people understood the story of the beginning, not as a distant myth, but as a living reality that shaped their worship, their ethics, and their hope. The lost books begin exactly where Genesis falls silent, and they open a window into a grief so profound that it reshapes everything we thought we knew about the first family. Adam and Eve have been cast out of the garden, and they are utterly devastated, wandering in a world that feels hostile and alien. Unlike the terse biblical account, which moves quickly from the fall to the birth of Cain with barely a pause for breath, these ancient texts dwell on their sorrow with a tenderness that is almost unbearable. They give us the emotional reality of the fall, the raw and unvarnished trauma of leaving paradise, the shock of entering a world where pain and death are no longer abstractions but daily companions. For the first time in their existence, Adam and Eve experience hunger that gnaws at their insides, thirst that parches their throats, cold that seeps into their bones, and darkness that terrifies their souls. They had known only the perfect light of Eden, where the sun never set because it didn't need to, where the trees bore fruit without effort and the animals lived in harmony. Now the sun sinks below the horizon, and they are seized by a terror they cannot name. They clutch each other in the gathering gloom, weeping and crying out to God, convinced that the darkness is the end of all things.
When morning comes and light returns, they begin to understand that this is the new rhythm of existence: day and night, light and dark, joy and sorrow cycling endlessly in a fallen world. But understanding does not ease the pain, it only deepens it. The text describes their first meal outside the garden with heartbreaking detail. They find a few wild herbs growing near a rocky outcropping, and they do not know if they are safe to eat. They watch animals approach the same plants, and only after the animals eat and survive do they dare to taste. Eve weeps as she chews, remembering the abundance of Eden, where every tree was pleasing to the sight and good for food. Adam tries to comfort her, but his own tears fall on the bitter herbs. They are learning what it means to live by the sweat of their brow, and the lesson is brutal. They fashion rough clothing from leaves and animal skins, covering themselves not from shame now, but from the cold that bites at night. They find a cave in the side of a hill and make it their shelter, and as they lie on the hard stone, they remember the soft grass of Eden where they used to sleep in the presence of God. The contrast is unbearable, and yet they must bear it. There is no going back. Eve's grief eventually becomes more than she can bear. One day, as they wander near a river, she stops and stares at the water for a long time. Adam does not know what she is thinking. He is busy trying to find food, trying to build a fire, trying to do all the things that survival now requires. When he looks up, he sees her walking into the river. At first, he thinks she is going to drink or bathe, but she keeps walking, deeper and deeper, until the water reaches her waist, then her chest, then her shoulders. He calls out to her, but she does not turn back. She throws herself forward into the current, and her body disappears beneath the surface. Adam runs to the river's edge, but he cannot swim. He does not know how. He has never needed to know. He screams her name, he prays, he weeps, but all he can do is watch the current carry her downstream. For 6 days he follows the river, searching for her, hoping against hope that she will somehow emerge. On the 6th day, he finds her body floating face down in a shallow eddy, motionless, pale, as if dead. He wades into the water and pulls her to the shore, and as he holds her in his arms, he feels no breath, no heartbeat, no sign of life. For 6 more days he sits with her body, refusing to leave, refusing to accept that she is gone. He prays as he has never prayed before, bargaining with God, pleading for her life. "O Lord, take my soul instead. Let me not see this sorrow. Let me die so that she may live." On the 7th day, something extraordinary happens. As Adam kneels by Eve's body, exhausted beyond words, a light descends from heaven. It is not like the light of the sun or the moon or any light he has ever seen. It is warm, and it carries a presence, a consciousness, a love so pure that Adam feels his grief begin to dissolve. The light touches Eve's body, and she draws breath. Her eyes open. She looks at Adam, and for a moment, neither of them speaks. Then they hold each other and weep, not tears of sorrow this time, but tears of relief, of gratitude, of wonder. And then a voice speaks from the light. It is the voice of God, but not the voice of judgment they heard at the garden gate. This voice is gentle, tender, full of compassion. "Eve," the voice says, "why did you seek to end the life I gave you? Do you think the garden was the only place where my love could reach you? Do you think I have abandoned you here in this wilderness?" The voice goes on to tell them that they will not return to Eden in this life, that the way is barred and will remain barred until the end of the age. But then it makes a promise that will echo through all the centuries to come. "After 5,500 years, the voice says, I will send my son. He will be born of a woman, born under the law, born into the same fallen world that you now inhabit. He will walk where you walk, suffer what you suffer, feel what you feel. And in the fullness of time, he will offer himself for your salvation. The serpent's head will be crushed. The door that has been closed will be opened again, not back to Eden, but forward to something greater, something that Eden itself was only a shadow of." In that moment, Adam is given a vision. It is not a dream or a trance, but something more real than reality itself. He sees the future unfolding before his eyes like a vast tapestry woven of light and shadow. He sees his descendants multiplying, filling the earth, building cities and kingdoms. He sees the line of Cain growing wicked, inventing weapons of war, filling the earth with violence. He sees the line of Seth, his righteous son, living apart on the mountain, preserving the knowledge of God and the promise given in the cave. He sees Enoch, the seventh from him, walking so closely with God that one day he simply walks out of the world and into eternity. He sees Noah building an ark while the world laughs at him, and then the floodwaters rising, covering the mountains, washing away the corruption.
He sees the ark coming to rest on a mountain, and Noah and his family stepping out onto a cleansed earth. He sees Abraham leaving his homeland, following a call that will make him the father of many nations. He sees Moses leading the people out of Egypt, receiving the law on Mount Sinai, building the tabernacle in the wilderness. He sees David, the shepherd king, and Solomon, the wise builder of the temple. He sees the prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, speaking words of judgment and hope. And then, at the center of the vision, he sees a woman, young and humble, and a child born in a stable. He sees that child growing, teaching, healing, loving. He sees him betrayed, arrested, beaten, and nailed to a cross. He sees him die, and he feels the whole creation shudder. And then he sees the empty tomb, and he knows that death has been defeated. The promise is fulfilled, the serpent's head is crushed, and Adam, watching from the depths of time, understands that his fall was not the end, but the beginning of a story that would lead to this moment of redemption. When the vision fades and the light withdraws, Adam and Eve are left alone in the wilderness, but they are not the same. The hope that has been planted in their hearts changes everything. They still live in the cave. They still hunger and thirst and struggle. They still weep for the garden they have lost. But now they weep with hope. They know that their suffering has meaning. They know that the story is not over. They know that the God who cast them out has not abandoned them, but is already working to bring them back, not to Eden, but to something greater. They return to their cave, and for the first time it does not feel like a prison. It feels like a way station, a place of waiting, a place of preparation. Adam takes a stone and begins to carve marks on the wall, recording the vision he has seen, the promise he has received. He knows he will not live to see its fulfillment. 5,500 years is longer than any human life. But his children will see it, and their children, and their children's children, down through the generations. He calls his sons and daughters to him and tells them what he has seen. He charges them to pass the story on, to keep the hope alive, to never forget that the promise was given and that it will be kept. Seth, his righteous son, becomes the keeper of the promise. He learns the marks on the cave wall, the symbols that record the vision. He teaches them to his own children, and they teach them to theirs. For 1,600 years, the promise is passed from generation to generation, preserved in a line of faithful witnesses who live apart from the corruption spreading in the valley below. They know that one day the world will be judged, that the flood will come, that only those who keep the promise will be saved. And when the flood finally arrives, when the waters rise and the ark lifts above the drowning world, the promise goes with Noah. It is carved into the timbers of the ark. It is whispered in the prayers of the survivors. It is passed to Shem, then to Abraham, then to Isaac, then to Jacob, then to the 12 tribes, then to the prophets, then to the exiles, then to the remnant, then to the wise men who watched the stars, then to a young girl in Nazareth,
then to her Son, who is the promise itself, made flesh and dwelling among us. The lost books expand dramatically on the genealogy of Genesis, and in doing so, they reveal a cosmic drama playing out between two families, two ways of living, two destinies. Adam and Eve have many children. The texts speak of 30 sons and 30 daughters born over the long centuries of their lives. But two lines emerge as most significant: the descendants of Seth and the descendants of Cain. The sons of God mentioned in Genesis chapter 6, the mysterious beings who saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and took them as wives, are identified here as the children of Seth, the righteous line that remained faithful to God, living on the mountain near the cave of treasures. The daughters of men are the women descended from Cain, the wicked line that had grown corrupt, violent, and rebellious, living in the valley below. For generations, the Sethites remained separate, preserving the knowledge of God and the promises given to Adam. They lived simply in caves and tents, praying and fasting and waiting for redemption. They did not build cities or forge weapons or seek power. They kept the flame of hope alive in a world growing dark. The Cainites, by contrast, are described as exceedingly wicked, prone to murder, incest, and every kind of depravity. They live in the valley, building cities, accumulating wealth, and forgetting God entirely. Cain himself, after killing Abel, is said to have wandered the earth in terror, eventually settling in the land of Nod, where he built a city and named it after his son Enoch. His descendants become the inventors of civilization as we know it, but it is a civilization built on violence, greed, and rebellion against God. They invent music, but it is music that lures the righteous into sin. They forge weapons, and with them they fill the earth with bloodshed. They build great cities, and in those cities they practice every form of wickedness imaginable. The lost books do not flinch from describing the depths of their depravity. They are a warning, a cautionary tale about what happens when humanity forgets its Creator and worships only itself. The turning point comes with a figure named Jenan, the son of Lamech, a descendant of Cain, who is described as a genius of invention and a master of seduction. Jenan is a fascinating and terrifying character. He invents musical instruments like jubal, and he uses them to create melodies so beautiful that they can be heard for miles. He invents weapons of war like tubal-cain, swords and spears and shields, and he teaches men how to use them to kill. He also discovers how to make alcohol, how to ferment the fruits of the earth into drinks that cloud the mind and loosen inhibitions. And he uses all of these inventions for one purpose: to lure the Sethites down from their mountain. He stations musicians at the foot of the mountain, and their melodies drift up to the caves where the righteous live. The Sethite women hear the music, and it stirs something in them, a longing they cannot name. They creep down to the valley to see where the beautiful sounds are coming from, and Jenan welcomes them with feasts and wine and flattery. Soon the Sethite men follow, searching for their wives and daughters, and they too are seduced by the pleasures of the valley. Jenan teaches them to make weapons, and they become skilled in war. He teaches them to drink, and they become addicted to the escape it provides. He teaches them to worship idols, and they forget the God of their fathers. When the Sephites intermarry with the Cainites, the children born from these unions are the Nephilim, the mighty men of Genesis chapter 6, who fill the earth with violence. The lost books describe them as giants, not only in stature, but in wickedness. They devour the produce of the earth and turn against one another. They commit atrocities that cannot be named. The whole creation groans under the weight of human sin, and God, seeing this, decides to send the flood. But even in this judgment there is mercy. The line of Seth is not entirely extinguished. Methuselah, the son of Enoch, remains faithful. His son, Lamech remains faithful, and Lamech's son Noah remains faithful. They alone, among all the descendants of Adam, still walk with God. They alone still remember the promise given in the cave. They alone are worthy to carry the hope through the waters of judgment into a new world. Before the flood, one figure stands above all others as a bridge between the world that was and the world that would be. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, is described in Genesis with tantalizing brevity. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. The lost books fill in the details of this mysterious figure, linking him directly to the Book of Enoch, another forbidden scripture that your audience knows well. Enoch is portrayed as the scribe of righteousness, the one who preserves the ancient wisdom, the one who is shown the secrets of heaven and the coming judgment. He receives visions of the watchers, the angels who fell and corrupted humanity. He is taken on a journey through the heavens, shown the places of the dead, the storehouses of the winds, the foundations of the earth, and he is told that a flood is coming, that the world will be destroyed, but that his descendants will be saved. Enoch warns his contemporaries of the coming judgment, but only a few listen. His son Methuselah, his grandson Lamech, and his great-grandson Noah carry the line forward. When Enoch is taken up to heaven, he leaves behind writings that will be preserved through the flood and passed down to future generations.
These writings become the basis for the Book of Enoch, which is quoted in the New Testament and revered by many early Christians. The lost books of Adam and Eve present Enoch as the bridge between the antediluvian world and the world after the flood, the keeper of the flame when all others had been extinguished. He is the one who sees what is coming and prepares for it, the one who trusts God even when the world around him is collapsing. And in this, he is a model for all who seek to preserve wisdom in times of darkness. The flood in the lost books is not just a punishment, though it is certainly that. It is also a purification, a cleansing, a resetting of the cosmic order. The earth had become so corrupt that only total immersion in water could wash away the stain. The ark becomes a new cave of treasures, a vessel carrying the remnant of humanity through the waters of judgment into a new world. Noah and his family are saved not just because Noah was righteous, but because they carried within them the last seeds of the Sethite line, the promise given to Adam. For 40 days and 40 nights the waters rise, covering even the highest mountains. Every living thing outside the ark perishes. The world that Adam and Eve knew, the world of Cain and Abel, of Seth and Enoch, of Genon and the Nephilim, is gone forever. When the ark finally rests on the mountains of Ararat, Noah steps out onto a cleansed earth. The sky is clear, the air is fresh, the ground is soft and wet and ready for new life. Noah builds an altar and offers sacrifice, and God makes a covenant with him, promising never again to destroy the earth by flood. The rainbow appears in the sky, a sign of that promise, a reminder that judgment is not the final word. But the story does not end with the flood. Noah and his sons are given the same command Adam received: be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. But now they carry with them the memory of what happened when humanity forgot God. They know the story of the fall, the promise in the cave, the corruption of the two lines, the judgment of the flood. They have seen with their own eyes what happens when humanity abandons its Creator. And so they begin again, not in a garden this time, but in a fallen world, carrying with them the hope of redemption. The lost books of Adam and Eve end with the genealogy from Adam to Jesus, tracing the line of the promise through all the generations. This genealogy is remarkable because it includes not just the names of the fathers, but also the names of their wives, information found nowhere else in ancient literature. It connects Adam to Abraham, Abraham to David, David to Joseph, and Joseph to Jesus. It shows that the promise given in the cave was kept, that the line of Seth survived,
that the hope passed down through the centuries finally found its fulfillment in a stable in Bethlehem. The lost books of Adam and Eve diverge from Genesis in fascinating ways that help explain why they were excluded from the biblical canon. They provide details Genesis omits, such as Adam instructing his sons on which sacrifices to offer, while Genesis presents their offerings as spontaneous. The lifespans of the patriarchs differ slightly between the accounts. Enos lives 985 years in the lost books versus 905 in Genesis. Mahalalel 870 instead of 895. Jared 989 instead of 962. These small discrepancies suggest different textual traditions and ways of counting time. Most strikingly, the lost books name the wives of Jesus' ancestors: Cain's wife Awina, Seth's wife Sora, Enoch's wife Edna, giving flesh to shadowy genealogical figures and honoring women as essential to the sacred story. These differences don't make the books false, but rather witnesses to a different stream of ancient memory, reminding us that the Bible we have emerged from choices, debates, and controversies. The excluded books offer another voice, another perspective on the same foundational story. But these ancient texts are not merely historical curiosities. They are your story, speaking directly to your own spiritual journey. The expulsion from Eden mirrors your sense of separation from the divine, that ache that keeps you searching, that restlessness that will not let you rest. The suffering in the wilderness mirrors your struggles, your doubts, your moments of despair. You know what it is to hunger for meaning, to thirst for purpose, to feel abandoned in the darkness. The cave where Adam and Eve sought refuge is the secret place within you, the solitude where transformation happens, where you meet God when no one is watching. Satan's attacks mirror the voices in your own head, whispers of unworthiness, of despair, of giving up. But the lost books tell you these voices are not yours. They belong to the enemy, and they can be resisted. The two lines of Seth and Cain represent the forces within you, the pull toward righteousness and the pull toward corruption, the higher self and the lower self, and every day you choose which line to follow. The flood is the judgment you face when the lower self takes over, a necessary purification that clears away what is false so truth can emerge. And the promise given to Adam in the cave that after 5,500 years the Son of God would come is the promise that no matter how far you fall, redemption is here, not as a distant historical event, but as a present reality, a living hope, a door standing open. Those 5,500 years represent the fullness of time, the moment when waiting becomes fulfillment. For Adam, that moment was far in the future. For us, it is already here. The Son has come. The serpent's head is crushed. The door is open. The lost books of Adam and Eve survived in Ethiopian monasteries and Syrian caves because they speak to something deep in the human soul, the need to know the rest of the story, the desire to understand suffering, the hope that the fall is not final. Adam passed that hope down through the generations until it reached you. You are an observer of this story, but a participant. You are Adam at the cave mouth, Eve rising from the river, Seth climbing the mountain, Enoch walking with God. The lost books have found you. Now the question is, what will you do with them? Temet Nosce, know thyself. For in knowing yourself, you come to know Adam, and in knowing Adam, you come to know the one who promised that light would come. The first man wept in a cave, and his tears became the seed of hope. The last man rose from a tomb, and his resurrection became the harvest. Between them stretches the ages, and you are part of that story. The cave is still there, the mountain still stands, the river still flows, and the door is still open. The promise given to Adam in the cave did not die with him. It traveled through the ark with Noah, through the covenant with Abraham, through the line of kings and prophets, until it found its fulfillment in a stable in Bethlehem. And now that promise has traveled through thousands of years to reach you, here in this moment. The lost books of Adam and Eve were hidden for centuries, preserved by monks in distant monasteries, waiting for a generation ready to hear their message. You are that generation. The cave is still waiting. The mountain still calls. The river still flows. And the door is still open. If this journey into the forbidden scriptures has awakened something in your soul, if the story of Adam and Eve has become your own story, then please help this channel grow and spread the light by hitting that like button, subscribing to Temet Nosce, and turning on notifications so you never miss another exploration into the ancient wisdom that is calling all us awake. And drop a comment below telling us what the promise means to you. Have you felt the cave calling? Have you heard the voice in the darkness? Your voice matters, and together we're learning to walk with God as Enoch did, step by step, until the world fades away and only the divine remains. Thank you for being with us.